There's a kind of grief in relationships that doesn't come from endings, but from distance while the relationship is still technically there. It's the experience of caring deeply for people who are still present in your life, yet feeling emotionally misaligned, misunderstood, or even misremembered by them. And that kind of grief is uniquely confusing because there's no clear closure to point to. Nothing officially ends. Instead, something quietly shifts and you find yourself learning how to relate to a version of connection that no longer feels mutual. Forgiveness is often talked about as if it's a moment of decision, something you choose once and then move on from. But in reality, forgiveness in strained relationships is usually repetitive work. It's not a single breakthrough. It's a constant returning, a daily decision not to let resentment become your identity, especially when the pain hasn't been fully resolved. Because the hardest part isn't always what happened. It's what continues happening emotionally after the fact. The silence, the misunderstanding, the distance that doesn't respond to effort. One of the most painful experiences in relationships is when your intentions no longer match how you are perceived. When you know what you gave, your time, your care, your consistency, but that version of you doesn't seem to exist in someone else's memory anymore. It creates a deep internal conflict. You start questioning not only the relationship, but your own reality in it. And when that disconnect lasts long enough, it can begin to feel like you're constantly trying to prove something that cannot be proven in the way you need it to be. In those moments, forgiveness becomes something much more complex than reconciliation. It becomes emotional surrender, not in the sense of giving up, but in the sense of releasing control over how you are understood. You learn that you cannot force clarity in someone else's perception. You cannot rewire their narrative with your effort, and you cannot heal a misunderstanding simply by continuing to explain yourself. So the work shifts inward. Forgiveness becomes the decision to stop letting unresolved relational pain dictate your internal world. It becomes choosing not to rehearse the hurt over and over in your mind, not because the hurt didn't matter, but because revisiting it endlessly does not create healing. It only deepens exhaustion. And at some point, survival in relationships requires that you separate what you can influence from what you cannot. There's also a quiet kind of strength required to keep loving in environments where the response is inconsistent or unclear. Not performative love and not conditional love, but steady, grounded love that does not depend entirely on being validated in return. That kind of love is not naive, it's disciplined, because it requires you to stay emotionally open without becoming emotionally consumed. Forgiveness does not mean pretending things didn't happen. It does not mean excusing harm or minimizing disappointment. It means refusing to let those experiences become the only defining story of your life. It means making space for complexity, that someone can matter to you and still hurt you, that relationships can hold both care and conflict at the same time, and that healing does not always require mutual agreement to begin. In the end, forgiveness in broken or strained relationships is less about restoring what was lost and more about protecting what remains in you. It's about choosing not to let bitterness become the permanent lens through which you see connection. It's about learning to carry truth without letting it harden into closure you cannot control. And it's about continuing forward with the understanding that peace is not always something you receive from others. It's something you build internally, one decision at a time.